Welcome back to Infidelity Tales Lab. We're incredibly grateful for your support. Before we begin today's tale, tell us, which city or country are you joining us from? We love connecting with our global audience. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1, Hidden Currents. Damon Vega stared at the blueprint spread across his desk, the soft glow of his lamp illuminating the plans for what would become their dream home. At 42, he had mastered the art of patience. His calloused hands, testament to years of construction work before he founded Vega Construction, traced the outline of the master bedroom. It was nearly midnight, but sleep evaded him as it often did. Behind those stoic gray eyes lay secrets few would suspect. Before settling in Oak Ridge, Connecticut, Damon had served 8 years in Special Forces, experience that taught him to always have contingencies. While his wife Bianca thought their finances were simple and transparent, Damon maintained separate accounts containing nearly 60% of his actual worth. Still working? Bianca appeared in the doorway, her silk robe clinging to her slender frame. At 38, she remained stunning, honey blonde hair framing a face that could still turn heads. They'd met when Damon renovated her father's vacation home 12 years ago. Just finishing up. He smiled, the kind that never quite reached his eyes these days. The Morrison project has some complications. You work too hard, she said, not moving to touch him. I'm going to bed. Damon nodded, watching her retreat. There was a time when she would have kissed him goodnight. Their marriage had always been a careful dance of personalities, his methodical reserve against her social vivacity. But lately, the distance had grown palpable. Their marriage began cooling 3 years ago, coinciding with Damon's company taking off. While he built houses for others, the foundation of his own home cracked. Bianca's spending increased dramatically, her social calendar mysteriously full. The signs were subtle at first. New clothes with tags removed before coming home, unexplained absences, and a sudden password protection on her phone. Damon noticed everything, but said nothing. His military training had taught him to gather intelligence before acting. The next morning, over breakfast, Bianca announced plans for a weekend spa retreat. Sandra's been feeling down since her divorce. I think girl time would help. Damon sipped his coffee, noting how she avoided eye contact. Sandra Keller? I thought you two weren't close. We reconnected recently. Bianca's smile was practiced. Her situation reminded me how fragile marriages can be. After she left, Damon called his foreman. Terry, take point on the Westbrook site today. Then he drove to his empty rental property on Maple Street and retrieved a small case from the basement safe. Inside were surveillance tools from his military days, items he'd kept for security purposes but never expected to use in his marriage. By evening, he placed discreet cameras in their bedroom and living room and installed a tracker on Bianca's Mercedes. That night, he checked the tracker. Bianca wasn't at any spa. Her car had been parked for hours at the Westlake Hotel, 20 miles away. In his home office, Damon unlocked a hidden drawer and withdrew a worn leather journal. Inside were account numbers, property deeds, and cash reserves unknown to Bianca. He'd been adding to this contingency fund throughout their marriage, not because he planned for failure, but because experience had taught him to prepare for all scenarios. Trust, but verify, his commander used to say. Now those words echoed with bitter irony. Chapter 2, The Web Unravels. Damon maintained his routine for the next month, collecting evidence while showing no signs of suspicion. The surveillance revealed text messages to someone saved as Client S and hush phone calls when Damon wasn't home. The GPS tracker showed regular trips to the Westlake Hotel. On a Tuesday morning, Damon met Terry Fletcher for coffee. At 55, Terry had been with him since the beginning, a former Army Ranger who understood loyalty. Something's eating at you, Terry noted, stirring his black coffee. Bianca is having an affair. Damon's voice remained steady. Terry's weathered face showed no surprise. You're sure? Positive. Been gathering evidence for weeks. What's your play? Still formulating. But I need your discretion. Terry nodded. Always. You know who the guy is? Working on it. I've got a name, Sebastian Price. Moved to town about a year ago. Art dealer with galleries in New York and Boston. Later that day, Damon drove to his accountant's office. Martin Russo had handled his finances for years, including his separate accounts. "I need to discuss some asset protection," Damon said after pleasantries. Martin closed his office door. "Everything okay with Bianca? That's why I'm here. I need to secure my assets without alerting her." After reviewing options, Damon transferred additional funds to his secure accounts and changed the ownership structure of 2 investment properties. He left feeling grimly satisfied. Whatever happened next, he would not be financially vulnerable. That weekend, Bianca announced another girls' trip. Damon wished her well, then followed at a distance. Her Mercedes led him to an exclusive lakeside restaurant where he watched from his truck as she embraced a tall, dark-haired man in an expensive suit. Sebastian Price looked about 45, with the polished charm of old money. Through binoculars, Damon observed their intimate dinner, the way Sebastian touched Bianca's hand, the complicit smiles they shared. Later, he used his contacts to run a background check. Sebastian Price had appeared in Connecticut mysteriously flush, with cash despite his previous gallery in San Francisco, closing amid rumors of fraudulent art sales. He'd inserted himself smoothly into Oak Ridge's elite social circles, where he'd undoubtedly met Bianca. The following Thursday, Damon received a text from an unknown number. "We should talk about Bianca. Coffee at Riverside Park, 2 p.m. tomorrow." When Damon arrived at the secluded bench, he found a petite woman with the same honey blonde hair as Bianca, but with sharper eyes. "Audrey Bennett," she introduced herself. "Bianca's sister. I didn't know Bianca was in touch with you." His wife had mentioned an estranged sister only once. "We're not close. That's why I can see clearly what she's doing to you." Audrey's expression hardened. "Sebastian isn't just her lover. They have plans for your money." Damon remained impassive. "Go on." "Bianca's always targeted wealthy men. Before you, there was a doctor in Boston. She drained his accounts before disappearing." Audrey hesitated. "I tried warning him too. He didn't listen." "Why help me?" "Because she destroyed our family with her lies. And because you seem different, smarter." She handed him a flash drive. Emails between them. "They think you're oblivious." That night, after Bianca fell asleep, Damon reviewed the contents. The correspondence revealed a calculated plan. Sebastian wasn't just sleeping with his wife. They were plotting to take Damon's business, home, and reputation. "Poor, clueless Damon," Bianca had written. "He still thinks I love him. Once we're ready, I'll file for divorce, claiming emotional abuse. With your connections and my acting skills, we'll take everything." Damon closed his laptop, a cold resolve settling in his chest. He would give them exactly what they expected, a trusting, unsuspecting husband, while preparing to dismantle their world. Chapter 3: Ignition Point. 3 months after confirming the affair, Damon initiated his counter-strategy. He purchased a secluded lakefront property through a shell company, using funds Bianca knew nothing about. The 4-bedroom house would become central to his plan. On a Friday evening, he suggested a special dinner at home. Bianca appeared surprised, but agreed. Damon cooked her favorite meal, opened an expensive wine, and maintained perfect composure. "I have a surprise," he said, sliding an envelope across the table. Inside were photos of the lake house. "I bought us a weekend home." Bianca's eyes widened with what he now recognized as calculated delight. "Damon, it's beautiful. When did you do this?" "Been saving for years. Wanted it to be special." He smiled. "It's fully furnished and ready. I thought we could move in next month." That night, Bianca made a call from her bathroom, whispering excitedly about a perfect lakefront property and how this makes everything easier. The next day, she announced a shopping trip for things for our new home. Instead, she met Sebastian at their usual hotel. Damon followed at a distance, watching them celebrate over champagne at the hotel restaurant. His expression never changed as he photographed them together. Over the following weeks, Damon meticulously prepared while Bianca grew increasingly bold. She suggested redecorating the lake house before they moved in. "We could use a fresh perspective," she said over breakfast. "I know a brilliant designer." "Sebastian Price?" Damon asked casually, watching shock flicker across her face. "I've seen his work. Very distinctive. Bianca recovered quickly. Yes, actually. We met at the Henderson Charity Gala. He's done amazing work for several friends. Invite him over then, Damon suggested. I'd like to meet him. The dinner that followed was a masterclass in deception from all sides. Sebastian arrived with expensive wine and practiced charm. Damon played the successful but naive husband perfectly. Your home is magnificent, Sebastian commented, eyes subtly assessing valuables. But your lake house, Bianca showed me photos, has tremendous potential. I trust my wife's judgment, Damon replied. And any friend of hers is welcome to contribute. By evening's end, the trap was set. Sebastian would oversee renovations at the lake house, giving him and Bianca regular excuses to meet. 2 weeks later, Damon announced a business trip to Denver. The Colton project needs attention. I'll be gone 5 days. Instead, he checked into a motel 30 minutes away and monitored the cameras he'd installed at both homes. It took less than 8 hours for Sebastian to arrive at their main residence. The footage showed Bianca greeting him with passionate familiarity. Damon suspects nothing, she said between kisses. He's so proud of that lake house. Thinks it's our future. Sebastian laughed. It's perfect timing. Once we're established there, you file for divorce, claiming this house has too many bad memories. Then we sell both properties, take the construction company proceeds, and move to the Cayman property, Bianca concluded. 6 months from now, Damon Vega will be a distant memory. What they didn't realize, Damon had already transferred majority ownership of his company to a trust. The lake house deed was structured under an LLC that could revert solely to him. And most importantly, he documented every aspect of their affair and conspiracy. On the 4th day of his business trip, Damon returned home unannounced. He entered silently through the garage, hearing voices from the living room. I can't wait anymore, Bianca was saying. Let's accelerate the timeline. I'll tell Damon I want you to move in temporarily while your apartment is renovated. He'll never agree to that, Sebastian replied. He will if I threaten to leave. Damon hates confrontation. He'll retreat to that lake house while we take over here. Damon stepped into the doorway. Is that what you think of me, Bianca? Their expressions shifted from shock to calculation. Bianca recovered first, tears instantly materializing. Damon, this isn't. Sebastian was just helping with the lake house plans. Stop lying, Damon said quietly. I know everything. Sebastian stood, adopting a conciliatory tone. Damon, let's discuss this reasonably. There's nothing to discuss. You're both predictable and sloppy. Damon's voice remained unervingly calm. Bianca, I bought that lake house with my secret savings. It's mine alone. Bianca's mask slipped, showing the coldness beneath. Fine. Then Sebastian will live here with me. This is my house too, and if you don't like it, you can leave. Damon looked between them, nodded once, and walked out without another word. The next morning, a moving truck arrived. Damon watched from his truck parked down the street as Sebastian directed movers carrying expensive furniture and art. He waited until they finished unloading, until Sebastian smugly inspected his possessions on the driveway before bringing them inside. That's when Damon approached, carrying a gas can. What are you doing? Sebastian demanded, stepping forward. Without speaking, Damon began dousing the furniture, artwork, and designer clothes. Stop. That's worth hundreds of thousands. Sebastian lunged forward, but froze when Damon produced a lighter. You wanted my life? Damon said. Here's your first lesson in what that means. The flame caught instantly. Expensive fabrics and wooden furniture ignited in a spectacular blaze. Sebastian's prized possessions, the symbols of his success and taste, crackled and blackened. Bianca came running from the house, screaming when she saw the inferno on her driveway. What have you done? Are you insane? Damon turned to her, his expression utterly composed. This is just the beginning. Neighbors emerged from their homes as black smoke billowed upward. Someone called the fire department. Sebastian attempted to salvage burning paintings, cursing as the flames singed his hands. Officer Neil Parker arrived first, taking in the scene with a veteran's practiced assessment. Sir, step away from the fire, he instructed Damon, who complied immediately. He's lost his mind. Bianca shrieked, pointing at Damon. He just started burning everything. Only his things, Damon corrected calmly. On my property. As firefighters arrived to control the blaze, Officer Parker separated the three of them for questioning. Damon explained the situation with composed precision, showing property deeds and marriage certificates. Technically, it's complicated, Parker admitted, but arson charges could still apply. Understand, Damon replied. I'm prepared for those consequences. As Damon was escorted to the police cruiser, Bianca and Sebastian watched with vindictive satisfaction. But they missed the slight smile that crossed his face, the look of a man who had planned for every contingency, including this one. The fire was merely the opening move in a game they didn't yet realize they were playing. Chapter 4. Ashes and Strategy. The holding cell at Oak Ridge Police Station was sparsely furnished. A metal bench, a toilet without privacy, and walls bearing the scribbled legacies of previous occupants. Damon sat with military posture, eyes focused on the middle distance, mind calculating variables. Officer Parker approached the bars. Your lawyer's here. Damon hadn't called one. A woman in her 50s with silver-streaked black hair and a tailored suit stood beside Parker. Diana Wells. She introduced herself once they were alone in the consultation room. Audrey sent me. Bianca's sister hired you. Audrey and I go back 20 years. She said you'd need someone who understands complicated situations. Diana's assessment was clinical. The arson charge is problematic but manageable. With the right approach, we can get it reduced to criminal mischief and destruction of property. And that approach would be, you'll plead temporary emotional distress. First offense, respected businessman, discovered wife's infidelity. Judges have sympathy for that narrative. She leaned forward. But that's short term. I gather you have longer plans. Damon studied her. What exactly did Audrey tell you? Enough to know you're not impulsive. The fire wasn't an emotional outburst. It was calculated. Her eyes narrowed. I don't need details. But if you want my services beyond this incident, I need to know I'm not aiding something truly destructive. I don't intend physical harm to anyone, Damon stated. But they plan to destroy everything I've built. I won't allow that. Diana nodded once. Then let's start with getting you released. 3 hours later, Damon walked out on bail. The conditions: no contact with Bianca or Sebastian, restricted access to his primary residence, and mandatory counseling sessions. Terry was waiting in the parking lot, leaning against his weathered pickup. Boss. Didn't call you, Damon said. Didn't need to. Heard about the fire. He handed Damon a set of keys. Figure you need somewhere to stay. My hunting cabin's stocked and private. The cabin was 30 miles outside town, surrounded by dense woodland. Simple but solid. 1 bedroom, stone fireplace, generator power. Perfect isolation for planning. That evening, Diana called with updates. Sebastian had filed a civil suit for property damages exceeding $300,000. Bianca was pursuing an emergency restraining order, claiming fear for her safety. She's also emptied your joint checking accounts, Diana added. Attempting to access your business accounts too. Let her try, Damon replied, knowing those accounts were already secured. One more thing. Audrey mentioned you have evidence of their relationship and intentions? Extensive documentation. Good. Don't volunteer it yet. We'll use it strategically. For the next week, Damon operated from the cabin, connecting remotely with his business while assembling the pieces of his counteroffensive. Each night, he added to a detailed timeline on a corkboard, mapping relationships, weaknesses, pressure points. News traveled fast in Oak Ridge. Local gossip painted Damon as either a jealous madman or a sympathetic cuckold, depending on allegiances. Sebastian leveraged his social connections, depicting himself as the innocent victim of an unstable contractor's rage. On day 9, Terry arrived with supplies and information. They're renovating your house. Italian marble, custom furniture. Using your contractor accounts at Jenkins Supply. Damon nodded, unsurprised. And the business? Running smooth. The boys are loyal. Terry hesitated. There's something else. Sebastian's been talking to Westridge developers about buying Vega Construction, claiming he has inside connection through family. This was unexpected, an acceleration of their timeline. Find out who he's meeting with at Westridge. The following day, Damon drove to a diner 50 miles away where he met Martin Russo. They can't touch the main assets, Martin confirmed. But Bianca's attorney is good, Patricia Hammond. She's building a case that your business grew during the marriage, making it partly marital property. How solid is her position? With average documentation? Concerning. With what we've prepared? Much weaker. Martin slid a folder across the table. I've compiled everything showing your separate property investments, premarital assets, and the specific growth trajectories. Meanwhile, Sebastian had moved fully into the house, accompanying Bianca to social functions as her supportive friend during her difficult marriage situation. They maintained public appearances of propriety while privately celebrating their progress. What they didn't know, one of the housekeepers Bianca had recently hired was Terry's niece, Casey, who documented their private conversations and plans. Diana's paralegal frequently dined at the same restaurants, capturing their indiscreet strategy discussions. And Officer Parker, troubled by inconsistencies in their statements, began looking more closely at Sebastian's background. 17 days after the fire, Damon executed his first major countermove. As Sebastian attempted to use Vega Construction's accounts at 3 supplier companies, he discovered the accounts frozen, requiring the physical presence of Damon Vega plus 2-factor authentication. The same day, Sebastian's meeting with Westridge developers was unexpectedly joined by Damon's attorney, who politely informed them that any acquisition talks regarding Vega Construction without the founder present could constitute tortious interference. That evening, Sebastian stormed into the house, finding Bianca arranging flowers. Your husband's blocking every move. Impossible. Damon's not smart enough for that. Then explain why I just got humiliated at Westridge, or why Jenkins Supply wouldn't release materials. Sebastian paced anxiously. He's not the pushover you described. The next morning, Bianca found her credit cards declined at her favorite boutique. By afternoon, her access to the joint accounts was restricted pending fraud investigation. Diana had filed motions citing suspicious withdrawals during pending legal separation. That night, as Sebastian and Bianca argued loudly in the kitchen, the doorbell rang. Officer Parker stood on the porch, accompanied by another officer. Sebastian Price? Parker's tone was professionally neutral. We need to ask you some questions about artwork sold to Thomas Whitmore last year. There's been a complaint about authenticity. This investigation, sparked by information Damon had gathered and anonymously provided, would eventually connect to 3 other fraud allegations against Sebastian in 2 states. The foundation beneath Sebastian and Bianca was beginning to crack, exactly as Damon had planned. Chapter 5. Ghosts and Shadows. The preliminary divorce hearing fell on a rainy Tuesday in late October. Damon arrived early, dressed in a conservative navy suit, his appearance that of a man weathering hardship with dignity. Diana Wells walked beside him, briefcase containing their meticulously prepared defense. Bianca entered with Patricia Hammond, a sharp-featured woman known for aggressive divorce litigation. Sebastian sat in the gallery, attempting to project supportive concern despite the investigation into his art dealings. Judge Marion Hargrove, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, established boundaries immediately. This hearing will determine temporary arrangements only. I expect civilized behavior from all parties. Patricia Hammond presented their case first, portraying Bianca as the victim of a controlling, resentful husband who'd become dangerous upon discovering her friendship with Sebastian. Mrs. Vega seeks exclusive use of the marital residence, substantial support payments, and protection from Mr. Vega's volatile behavior, Hammond concluded. His arson clearly demonstrates unstable tendencies. When Diana's turn came, her approach was measured. Your Honor, we contest only selected portions of opposing counsel's requests. She submitted documentation of Bianca's substantial withdrawals. Mr. Vega has no objection to separate living arrangements, but cannot finance Mrs. Vega's excessive spending during proceedings. Judge Hargrove reviewed the financial records with raised eyebrows. Mrs. Hammond, these withdrawals suggest your client removed over $42,000 in the week before separation. Household expenses, Your Honor. For Versace and Harry Winston, the judge frowned. I'm capping interim support at $3,000 monthly, reviewable at final proceedings. Outside the courtroom, Bianca confronted Damon. This pathetic attempt won't work. I'll get everything in the end. Damon merely nodded politely and walked away, leaving her unsettled by his confidence. That afternoon, Sebastian received a call from Westridge developers canceling all acquisition discussions regarding Vega Construction. His art fraud investigation had made them uncomfortable with the association. Meanwhile, Audrey Bennett had been busy. As part owner of an exclusive gallery in Manhattan, she began quietly inquiring about Sebastian's previous sales and authenticity certificates. These professional concerns reached his remaining clients, several of whom began requesting authentication verification for their purchases. At Terry's cabin that evening, Damon reviewed progress with his inner circle: Terry, Diana, Martin, and Audrey. The court board timeline now included red check marks beside completed objectives. Sebastian's reputation in the art world is crumbling, Audrey reported. 3 major clients are considering lawsuits. Financial vice is tightening too, Martin added. Bianca's spending hasn't decreased despite limited support. They're burning through cash. Terry provided surveillance updates. They're fighting constantly. Sebastian wanted luxury. Now he's facing limitations. Diana summarized their legal position. Judge Hargrove was unmoved by Bianca's performance. The temporary arrangements favor us significantly. Damon absorbed this information silently before addressing the next phase. Time to accelerate. Terry, implement the construction company protocol. Martin, trigger the property measures. Diana, prepare the evidence package, but hold until my signal. The following week brought systematic disruption to Sebastian and Bianca's plans. Vega Construction employees unanimously declined to work on renovations at the house, citing loyalty to the founder. Suppliers refused to extend credit for materials ordered under Bianca's authority. Simultaneously, the investigation into Sebastian's art dealings expanded to include tax implications. Officer Parker, now working with state financial crimes investigators, executed a warrant to examine records at the house. This is harassment, Bianca insisted as officers cataloged Sebastian's files. Just following evidence, ma'am, Parker replied professionally. The pressure intensified when Martin implemented the property measures. Formal notices that the Lake House LLC required significant capital contributions from all members to maintain ownership. Since Damon had structured Bianca as a minority stakeholder with contribution obligations, she now faced a $120,000 payment deadline. By month's end, Sebastian and Bianca's unified front showed visible cracks. His legal troubles mounted daily. Her social standing deteriorated as former friends, sensing a sinking ship, distanced themselves. Their finances strained under investigation scrutiny and declining income from Sebastian's gallery. One evening, Casey overheard a particularly vicious argument. "You promised Damon would be easily managed," Sebastian shouted. "Instead, I'm losing everything. How was I supposed to know he had hidden resources?" Bianca snapped back. "You're not exactly delivering either. Where's the big art dealer who could support us in style?" "Maybe I should cut my losses," Sebastian threatened. "There are other opportunities without your complications." This report delighted Damon. Division between conspirators was precisely his goal. The final component of Act 2 involved Meredith Holloway, the neighbor whose property adjoined Damon and Bianca's. A retired psychology professor with a reputation for perceptiveness, she had witnessed the unfolding drama with keen interest. Diana arranged lunch with Meredith, ostensibly to discuss neighborhood property values. Their conversation naturally turned to recent events. "Such a shame about the Vegas," Diana commented. "You've been neighbors for years, correct?" "Nearly a decade," Meredith confirmed, "though I've seen troubling patterns longer than most realized." "Oh, Bianca has always maintained careful public appearances. But I've witnessed concerning behaviors, manipulative tactics, gaslighting. Poor Damon worked constantly while she entertained guests during his absences." Would you be willing to provide a statement about your observations? Diana asked carefully. For context only, of course. Meredith's detailed affidavit, documenting years of observed behaviors, suspicious visitors, and Bianca's contradictory public versus private personas, became a powerful component of their evidence arsenal. As November ended, Sebastian received devastating news. The gallery's insurance company was voiding his policy due to material misrepresentations. Without insurance coverage, he couldn't maintain gallery operations or protect against client lawsuits. That same day, Bianca discovered her attempt to secure a personal loan using the house as collateral had been rejected. The property's ownership was under legal dispute, making it unacceptable security. Their retaliation was predictable. Sebastian began selling remaining artwork at desperate discounts. Bianca attempted accessing Damon's personal accounts using previously obtained passwords. Both actions triggered alerts in Damon's monitoring systems. They're getting desperate, Terry observed during their evening strategy session. Good, Damon replied. Desperate people make mistakes. The mistake came sooner than expected. Sebastian, attempting to salvage his position, approached Terry with a proposition. Inside information about Vega construction in exchange for cash. Terry recorded the conversation and brought it directly to Damon. This attempted corporate espionage became the catalyst for their final phase. That night, Damon made his first direct move since the fire. He texted Bianca, "We should talk. Alone. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., Lake House." Her reply came quickly, "Fine. This has gone far enough anyway." The second act was closing. The devastation was well underway. The final confrontation was set. Chapter 6. Worth and Worthlessness. The lake house stood serene against the backdrop of bare November trees, its reflection rippling across the cold water. Damon arrived early, ensuring everything was prepared. The recording devices were discreetly positioned, capturing every angle of the living room. Digital copies of all evidence were secured off-site. Bianca arrived precisely at 2, driving Sebastian's Audi rather than her Mercedes, a small but telling detail about their changing circumstances. She entered with practiced confidence, wearing an expensive coat that couldn't quite hide the strain of recent weeks. "You look terrible," she observed, scanning Damon with calculated concern. "Divorce agrees with me," he replied mildly. "Coffee. Let's skip pretenses." She sat on the leather sofa, crossing her legs. "This has gone too far. We're destroying each other for what? Pride." Damon remained standing. "Not pride. Consequences. We could end this today," she continued. "A reasonable settlement, clean break. Sebastian and I will relocate. You'll never have to see us again." "What's your proposal?" Her terms were predictable. The main house, half of Vega Construction's value, and significant alimony. In exchange, she would generously relinquish claims to the lake house and unnecessary legal actions. Damon listened without expression. "Is that Sebastian's position too?" "Sebastian understands compromise," she replied carefully. "Interesting." Damon moved to the kitchen counter, retrieving a folder. Before responding, "You should review this." Inside were photographs. Sebastian meeting with a young blonde woman at a Boston hotel 3 days earlier. The same woman accompanying him to a real estate office. Financial records showing a recently opened joint account. "His name is on a lease in Cambridge," Damon added. 2-bedroom apartment, starting next month. Bianca's composure fractured. "You're lying. You know I'm not. Sebastian's contingency plan doesn't include you, Bianca." Her shock transformed quickly to calculation. "These could be manipulated. And regardless, it doesn't change our situation. Actually, it fundamentally changes your negotiating position." Damon placed another folder before her. "Your conspiracy against me is thoroughly documented. Every conversation, every plan, every action." Flipping through printouts of emails, transcripts, and financial records, Bianca's expression hardened. "You've been spying on me? That's illegal. So is conspiracy to commit fraud." He remained calm. Connecticut law specifically addresses marital property division in cases of proven conspiracy. Judges have broad discretion to award punitive divisions. For the first time, Genuine uncertainty crossed Bianca's face. What do you want? The terms are non-negotiable. You relinquish all claims to Vega Construction. The main house will be sold, with proceeds primarily directed to my designated charities. You retain personal property purchased before our marriage and a one-time settlement of $50,000. That's nothing. Less than nothing after 12 years. You'll receive exactly what you brought to this marriage. Damon's voice remained level. You have 48 hours to accept, or everything, including evidence of your conspiracy and Sebastian's fraud, goes to prosecutors, divorce court, and the press. Bianca's mask fully slipped, revealing the cold rage beneath. You're bluffing. You don't have the stomach for this kind of war. You never really knew me, Bianca. That was your first mistake. Her phone rang. Sebastian, based on her expression. She answered tersely, moving toward the window. The conversation was brief but intense, ending with visible shock. Problem? Damon inquired. Sebastian's gallery was just raided by police. Her voice trembled slightly. They're seizing everything, claiming evidence of systematic fraud. Unfortunate timing, Damon commented. The truth dawned slowly across her features. You orchestrated all of this. From the beginning, even the fire was planned. I merely ensured consequences matched actions. Bianca's desperation surfaced in a final attempt at manipulation. She approached him, voice softening. Damon, we could start over. Just us. I made a terrible mistake with Sebastian. Stop. His tone cut through her performance. That might have worked on the man you thought I was. That man never existed. She retreated, mask completely abandoned. You'll regret this. I still have options. Fewer than you think. Damon checked his watch. Officer Parker is currently executing a warrant at our house, based on evidence that Sebastian has been keeping fraudulent financial records there. Any attempt to remove or destroy potential evidence would be obstruction of justice. As if on cue, Bianca's phone lit up with messages, presumably Sebastian demanding her return. 48 hours, Damon reminded her. My attorney will contact yours tomorrow with formal documentation. After she left, Damon stood at the window watching her car disappear down the private road. Terry emerged from the guest bedroom where he'd monitored the conversation. She'll try something desperate, Terry warned. Counting on it, Damon replied. That evening, Bianca and Sebastian engaged in frantic damage control. Sebastian's legal troubles had become critical. Potential federal charges for wire fraud, tax evasion, and interstate transportation of fraudulent artwork. His remaining assets were frozen pending investigation. Their plan to ambush Damon had collapsed. Their relationship was fracturing under pressure, and the 48-hour deadline loomed like a guillotine blade. Predictably, they attempted one final desperate maneuver. Sebastian contacted Diana, claiming to have exculpatory evidence regarding Bianca's innocence and Damon's criminal harassment. The meeting was scheduled for neutral ground, a downtown law office, with both attorneys present. Sebastian arrived with a USB drive allegedly containing proof that Damon had manufactured evidence and deliberately sabotaged Sebastian's business. Diana reviewed the files with professional detachment before responding. Mr. Price, this appears to be doctored correspondence purportedly between Mr. Vega and various business associates. She inserted another drive into the computer. For comparison, here are the authenticated originals, including metadata verification. Sebastian's attorney blanched. Presenting falsified evidence could trigger severe professional consequences. Additionally, Diana continued, attempting to introduce fraudulent evidence constitutes another criminal offense. Would you like to reconsider your position? By evening, Sebastian had fled Oak Ridge, leaving Bianca to face consequences alone. He emptied their shared accounts before disappearing, taking what liquid assets remained. When Bianca returned to the house, she found changed locks and Officer Parker waiting with additional warrants. Sebastian Price's alleged authentication documents were found here, Parker explained professionally. We'll need to conduct a thorough search. The 48 hours expired with Bianca's capitulation. Diana presented the signed agreement to Damon at the cabin. She had no choice, Diana confirmed. With Sebastian gone and charges pending, her position was untenable. Damon reviewed the documents carefully before signing. And the secondary provisions? All included. She's prohibited from disparaging you publicly. Any violation voids the financial settlement. In the quiet aftermath, Damon stood alone on the cabin porch, watching darkness settle over the forest. The methodical destruction of those who betrayed him had unfolded precisely as planned. Yet the victory tasted hollow, not because he regretted his actions, but because he recognized how thoroughly he'd misjudged Bianca from the beginning. His phone buzzed with a text from Terry. Phase 3 preparations complete. Ready when you are. Damon texted back a single word. Proceed. The devastation was complete. The final reckoning could begin. Chapter 7. Ruins and Revelations. 3 months after the settlement, Oak Ridge's brutal winter had begun to soften toward spring. The house on Maple Street stood empty, a sold sign freshly planted in the thawing front lawn. The proceeds, $1.2 million after expenses, had been divided according to the settlement. 90% to veteran support charities, 10% to Bianca. Damon had relocated permanently to the lake house, its isolation suiting his temperament. Vega Construction continued operating successfully, with Terry stepping up as operations manager, while Damon focused on design and client relationships. Bianca had moved to a modest apartment in town, her diminished circumstances evident in her reduced visibility at social functions. The settlement funds dwindled quickly between legal expenses and unsuccessful attempts to locate Sebastian, who had apparently established a new identity after fleeing to Europe. On a gray Tuesday morning, Damon met with Diana at her office for what she described as urgent business. Sebastian Price has resurfaced, she announced without preamble. Interpol flagged him attempting to sell forged artwork in Brussels. Belgian authorities are coordinating with U.S. prosecutors for extradition. Damon absorbed this information calmly. Will he implicate Bianca? Already has. His defense strategy appears to be claiming he was manipulated by her, that she has a pattern of targeting wealthy men for systematic financial extraction. Convenient narrative shift. It gets more complicated. Diana slid a document across her desk. Prosecutor Kate Rivera wants your testimony regarding their conspiracy. Damon scanned the preliminary witness request. My testimony could help Sebastian's victim narrative. Potentially. But refusing cooperation has its own risks. Diana's expression remained professional. There's another consideration. Audrey contacted me yesterday. Apparently, Bianca has been making concerning statements about you. This required no elaboration. Despite the non-disparagement clause, Bianca had been gradually constructing a counter-narrative portraying herself as the victim of Damon's calculated vengeance. What's your recommendation? Damon asked. Release the full evidence package. Not just to prosecutors, but strategically to certain community members whose opinions matter. Preemptive transparency. Damon considered this approach. The complete evidence would devastate any sympathy Bianca had managed to cultivate. It would also ensure Sebastian faced maximum consequences rather than succeeding with his manipulated victim defense. Proceed, he authorized. But coordinate with Officer Parker first. I want this handled legally and definitively. That afternoon, Damon drove to a rehabilitation facility outside Hartford. The reception desk directed him to a sunlit common room where Meredith Holloway sat reading. Mr. Vega, she greeted him, closing her book. This is unexpected. I heard about your fall. Wanted to check on you personally. He took the chair opposite her. The neighborhood isn't the same without your perspective. Meredith studied him with a shrewd assessment that made her valuable as a witness. You didn't come just for pleasantries. No, he admitted. I need your insight on a difficult decision. Over the next hour, they discussed the complexities of the Sebastian situation and Bianca's continuing manipulations. Meredith, whose psychology background provided unique perspective, offered observations that clarified Damon's thinking. People like Bianca and Sebastian don't truly understand consequences, she noted. Their narrative always positions them as either victims or heroes, never as architects of their own destruction. So complete exposure won't create genuine recognition? Not recognition, no, but it will create finality. Meredith adjusted her glasses. Your mistake was assuming they could learn. Their nature prevents that growth. The only productive outcome is ensuring they can't harm others. Before leaving, Damon left an envelope containing a generous check for the Rehabilitation Center's art therapy program, Meredith's passion project. Her insight had confirmed his decision. The evidence release proceeded systematically over the following week. Diana provided prosecutors with comprehensive documentation of Sebastian and Bianca's conspiracy. Officer Parker received additional evidence supporting financial crimes charges. Key community leaders, those whose opinions shaped local perceptions, received contextualized information about the truth behind Oak Ridge's most discussed divorce. The response was swift and devastating to Bianca's remaining social standing. Former friends who had offered reluctant support withdrew completely. Legal consequences multiplied as prosecutors added conspiracy charges to their case. Bianca's desperate counteroffensive came in the form of a late-night confrontation at the lake house. She arrived unannounced, clearly intoxicated, demanding entry. "You've destroyed everything," she shouted through the door. "The least you can do is face me." Damon opened the door, but blocked entry. Security cameras recorded everything. Another precaution against false allegations. "You should leave, Bianca. You're violating the restraining order. Because you're afraid of the truth coming out." Her carefully maintained appearance had deteriorated. Designer clothes replaced by disheveled casual wear, meticulous makeup absent. "You manipulated everything from the beginning." "We both know what happened," Damon replied evenly. "The evidence is irrefutable. Evidence you collected by spying, by trapping us." Her control continued fracturing. "You were supposed to be the fool, the oblivious husband we could easily control." This raw admission, captured clearly on security footage, became the final nail in her counter-narrative's coffin. "I'm calling Officer Parker," Damon stated calmly. "You need to leave now." "This isn't over," she threatened, retreating toward her car. "Sebastian's coming back. We'll still destroy you." The incident report filed that night documented her violations and threats. Judge Hargrove extended the restraining order indefinitely and revoked the remaining settlement funds for violating non-disparagement provisions. The following day, international news reported Sebastian Price's arrest in Brussels. Extradition proceedings had begun, with multiple charges awaiting his return to American soil. That evening, Damon convened his inner circle at the lake house. Terry, Diana, Martin, Audrey, and Officer Parker, who had become a trusted ally following his professional handling of the case. Sebastian's arrest changes timelines, Diana noted. Federal prosecutors want to coordinate with local charges. His attempt to paint himself as Bianca's victim is failing, Audrey added. 3 of his former clients have come forward with similar experiences predating his relationship with my sister. Parker provided law enforcement perspective. With the evidence package you've provided, both face significant consequences. Ms. Abbott will likely receive reduced charges for cooperation, but still faces potential incarceration. The systematic dismantling of both conspirators was proceeding as designed. Yet Damon remained unsatisfied. "There's still the matter of full accountability," he observed. "Sebastian has assets hidden internationally. Bianca likely has contingencies we haven't identified." "What are you suggesting?" Martin asked carefully. "The Cayman property they mentioned. Find it." Damon's expression hardened slightly. "They plan to enjoy their spoils there after destroying me. I want that option eliminated." This final phase, locating and legally claiming their escape hatch, would complete the closure Damon required, not from vengeful emotion, but from strategic necessity. As long as they retained resources, they remained potential threats. As his allies departed with new assignments, Damon stood alone on the dock, extending into the still-frozen lake. The ice would break soon, winter yielding to inevitable spring. But some things would remain unchangeable. His understanding of betrayal's cost and his unwavering commitment to ensuring those costs were paid in full. The reckoning was approaching its culmination. The ruins of broken trust would soon be swept away entirely, leaving only the foundation for whatever Damon chose to build next. Chapter 8. Judgment and Justice. The federal courthouse in Hartford imposed its granite authority over surrounding buildings, its neoclassical columns and broad steps projecting the weight of law. Damon ascended those steps on a bright May morning, Diana beside him, for Sebastian Price's arraignment following successful extradition. Inside courtroom 3B, Damon observed the proceedings with detached interest. Sebastian, his polished appearance now replaced by prison-issued clothing, pleaded not guilty to 27 federal charges including wire fraud, mail fraud, and interstate transportation of fraudulent goods. Prosecutor Kate Rivera requested denial of bail, citing substantial flight risk and international connections. The judge agreed, remanding Sebastian to custody pending trial. As they exited, Rivera approached Damon and Diana. "Mr. Vega, thank you for your cooperation. Your evidence package has been invaluable. Will Bianca Abbott face federal charges as well?" Diana inquired. "Grand jury convenes next week. We expect indictments for conspiracy and aiding fraud." Rivera's expression remained professionally neutral. "The documentation of their planned embezzlement from your company proved particularly compelling. This confirmation satisfied Damon's strategic objectives. Both betrayers would face maximum legal consequences, their schemes thoroughly exposed and punished." The drive back to Oak Ridge took them past the now-sold house where his marriage had disintegrated. New owners had already begun renovations, erasing physical reminders of that chapter. Damon felt nothing seeing the changed property. His emotional investment had been clinically severed months ago. At the lake house, Terry waited with updates on their final objective. Martin's contact in the Caymans confirmed it. Property purchased 18 months ago through a shell company named Solstice Holdings. 3-bedroom beachfront villa valued at $1.8 million. Purchased how? Damon questioned. That's where it gets interesting. Terry spread documents across the table. Down payment from Sebastian's gallery accounts, but monthly payments from an account under Bianca's maiden name at First Caribbean Bank. Account opened 3 years ago, before she met Sebastian. This revelation added another dimension to Bianca's deception. The conspiracy with Sebastian wasn't an isolated incident, but part of a pattern extending back years. "There's more," Terry continued. "The account receives regular transfers from similar accounts in Monaco and Belize. We're still tracing origins, but preliminary indications suggest connections to her previous relationships." Diana reviewed the documents with professional assessment. This significantly strengthens the prosecution's case. It demonstrates extended pattern rather than opportunistic behavior, and provides legal basis for asset seizure, Damon noted. The property was purchased with fraudulently obtained funds. "I'll coordinate with Rivera," Diana confirmed. "Federal asset forfeiture proceedings can begin immediately." That evening, Damon received an unexpected visitor. Officer Parker arrived in plain clothes, his expression uncharacteristically troubled. "This isn't an official visit," Parker clarified, accepting the offered coffee. "But something you should know. Bianca Abbott attempted suicide last night." Damon absorbed this information without visible reaction. "Condition? Stable. She's under psychiatric observation at Hartford General." Parker studied him carefully. "Hospital reported concerning statements she made, claims about you driving her to it, elaborate accusations. Documented? Fully, and contradicted by her earlier statements to the attending physician." Parker's law enforcement experience made him adept at reading manipulative behaviors. Classic attempt to create sympathetic narrative. Hospital staff weren't persuaded. Will this affect prosecution? Possibly delay, not derail. Rivera's aware and proceeding carefully. Parker hesitated before adding, "Thought you should prepare for potential media manipulation." Damon nodded appreciation for the warning. "I've anticipated various scenarios. This falls within expected parameters." After Parker left, Damon contacted Diana to implement their media contingency plan. By morning, 3 respected local residents, including Meredith Holloway, had provided statements contextualizing Bianca's history of manipulative behavior and false victim narratives. The attempted sympathy play backfired spectacularly. Rather than generating support, it reinforced perceptions of Bianca's manipulative nature. The psychiatric hold was extended for safety concerns, delaying but ultimately strengthening the pending federal case. Meanwhile, Sebastian's legal position deteriorated further. 3 former associates accepted immunity deals in exchange for testimony about systematic fraud spanning nearly a decade. The prosecution's case expanded to include evidence of similar romantic financial conspiracies with at least 2 other women before Bianca. In early June, Martin's financial investigation yielded the final crucial discovery: documentation of Bianca's previous marriage to a Boston cardiologist named Robert Klein, whose practice and reputation collapsed amid financial irregularities 5 years earlier. Dr. Klein had subsequently relocated to Arizona, changing specialties and rebuilding for financial ruin. Diana arranged a confidential meeting with Klein, who reluctantly agreed to discuss his experience. His testimony, recorded with consent, described a methodical campaign of manipulation, gaslighting, and financial extraction strikingly similar to Bianca's approach with Damon. She isolated me from colleagues, encouraged increasing luxury expenditures, then systematically drained accounts while creating narratives about my mental instability, Klein explained. When confronted, she threatened to destroy my medical reputation with false allegations. This pattern confirmation completed the comprehensive case against both conspirators. Diana submitted Klein's testimony to federal prosecutors, who added it to their expanding evidence collection. By midsummer, legal proceedings had reached critical mass. Sebastian, facing overwhelming evidence, accepted a plea agreement, 15 years in federal prison, restitution exceeding $5 million, and full cooperation against Bianca. His detailed confession confirmed every aspect of their conspiracy while attempting to minimize his own culpability. She approached me with the plan already formulated, he claimed. Bianca had executed similar schemes before. I was manipulated by her expertise. Prosecutors recognized this self-serving narrative but accepted his testimony as part of building their comprehensive case against Bianca. The Cayman property was seized through international financial cooperation, its ownership transferred to a victim restitution fund. Additional hidden accounts in Monaco and Belize were frozen pending further investigation. Bianca's final desperate countermove came through a carefully orchestrated media interview, portraying herself as the victim of Damon's obsessive revenge campaign. The sympathetic journalist, a former acquaintance from her social circle, published the piece in a regional lifestyle magazine. Damon's response came not through direct contradiction, but through authorized release of key evidence excerpts to mainstream news outlets. The unedited recordings of Bianca and Sebastian discussing their conspiracy, documentary evidence of systematic financial extraction, and testimony from multiple victims created an undeniable narrative of calculated predation. The lifestyle magazine printed a retraction. The sympathetic journalist faced professional backlash for failing basic verification standards, and Bianca's remaining public support evaporated completely. In August, facing overwhelming evidence and abandoned by her expensive legal team due to non-payment, Bianca accepted a plea agreement, 8 years in federal prison, restitution requirements, and permanent financial oversight following release. As summer faded toward autumn, Damon hosted a small gathering at the lake house. The evening held a sense of completion as his inner circle. Those who had remained loyal throughout shared a meal on the deck overlooking water now warmed by months of sunshine. Federal prosecutor called today, Diana informed them. Bianca's attempt to withdraw her plea was denied. Sentencing proceeds next month as scheduled. Terry raised his glass in silent acknowledgement. Audrey, whose testimony against her sister had cost her emotionally, nodded with complicated relief. What happens next for Vega Construction? Martin inquired. Expansion, Damon replied. 3 new development projects breaking ground next quarter. Terry's taking larger operational role. As conversation continued around him, Damon momentarily stepped away to the edge of the dock. The setting sun cast long shadows across the water, marking the transition between day and night. One chapter conclusively ended, another beginning with clear-eyed purpose. Justice, methodical, comprehensive, and inescapable, had been served, not through emotional vengeance, but through strategic dismantling of those who had attempted to destroy what he built. The system that Bianca and Sebastian had planned to manipulate had instead become the instrument of their downfall. When Damon rejoined the gathering, the conversation had turned to future plans. No more discussion of past betrayals or legal proceedings. Those matters were conclusively settled. Only forward momentum remained, built upon foundations too strong to be undermined by those who mistook patience for weakness. The reckoning was complete. Judgment had been rendered. Justice, in its most comprehensive form, had prevailed. Chapter 9. Aftermath and Ascension. 1 year after Sebastian's sentencing, Oak Ridge had largely forgotten the scandal that briefly dominated local conversation. Seasons had cycled through their inevitable progression, bringing new dramas and concerns to occupy collective attention. Damon Vega's presence in community consciousness had transformed from betrayed husband to successful businessman as Vega Construction expanded operations throughout New England. The company now employed over 60 people, with Terry Fletcher officially promoted to Chief Operations Officer. The lake house had undergone thoughtful renovation, not to erase history, but to align more completely with Damon's architectural vision. Clean lines, natural materials, and strategic glass created a space balancing privacy and connection with the surrounding landscape. On a crisp October morning, Damon sat at his desk reviewing plans for their largest project to date, a sustainable residential community incorporating cutting-edge environmental design. The company had shifted focus toward innovative, resource-efficient construction, attracting clients interested in both quality and responsibility. Diana arrived for their quarterly legal review, bringing updates on lingering legal matters. Sebastian's appeal was denied yesterday. His sentence stands without modification. And Bianca? Damon inquired, his tone reflecting professional interest rather than personal investment. Transferred to minimum security after 12 months, good behavior. Still serving 6 years remaining before parole eligibility. Diana arranged documents methodically across the desk. The monitoring systems flagged something interesting. She's been writing a memoir. Damon raised an eyebrow slightly. Attempting rehabilitation through narrative control. Federal guidelines restrict profiting from criminal activities, so publication options are limited, but worth monitoring. Diana's efficiency had become even more valuable as they transitioned from crisis management to preventative oversight. Her remaining assets continue diminishing. The restitution schedule will leave her with minimal resources upon release. These updates registered as data points rather than emotional concerns. Damon had moved beyond any personal connection to these individuals. They represented closed chapters rather than ongoing considerations. Quarterly compliance review shows all business operations exceeding regulatory requirements. Diana continued, transitioning to current matters. The new environmental certification positions us advantageously for municipal contracts. After concluding business discussion, Diana hesitated before adding, Judge Hargrove asked about you. She's retiring next month. Send appropriate acknowledgement. Her judicial fairness was instrumental. Later that day, Damon drove to Hartford for a meeting with Robert Klein, the cardiologist whose previous experience with Bianca had provided crucial testimony. Their initial connection through legal necessity had evolved into occasional professional consultation. Klein's medical background informed health-focused design elements in Vega Construction's current projects. They met at a quiet restaurant away from main thoroughfares. Klein, now in his 50s with distinguished gray at his temples, had regained professional confidence after years of recovery from his experience with Bianca. The hospital board approved our joint proposal, Klein announced after initial greetings. Construction begins in January. Congratulations. Your advocacy was decisive. Damon had partnered with Klein to develop specialized recovery housing for patients transitioning from intensive care, a project integrating medical expertise with architectural innovation. Their conversation eventually turned to shared experience. "Do you ever wonder who she might have targeted if not you?" Klein asked. "Occasionally," Damon acknowledged. "The pattern suggests she would have continued until stopped. That's the only comfort sometimes, knowing others were spared by our intervention." Klein studied his coffee thoughtfully. "When a federal agent first contacted me about testifying, I almost refused. Didn't want to reopen that chapter. What changed your mind?" Realizing my silence protected her, not me. Klein's expression reflected resolved determination. We couldn't control her actions, but we could control our response to them. This philosophy aligned precisely with Damon's approach throughout the ordeal, focusing on strategic response rather than emotional reaction. After returning to the lake house that evening, Damon received a call from Audrey Bennett, whose art gallery had flourished following Sebastian's removal from the industry. "You'll receive an official invitation tomorrow, but wanted to personally request your attendance," she explained. "The gallery's featuring young veterans in next month's exhibition. Your foundation's support made it possible." The Vega Foundation, established with proceeds from the marital home sale, had expanded from veteran support to include programs for financial literacy and psychological resilience. These focus areas reflected lessons from Damon's personal experience, transformed into constructive community impact. "I'll be there," he confirmed. The foundation board approved additional funding for next year's program. Weekend mornings typically found Damon working from the deck overlooking the lake, now edged with autumn's vibrant colors. This particular Saturday, Officer, now Detective, Parker stopped by with updates on a security matter affecting several local businesses. "Cyber intrusion attempts traced to Eastern European servers," Parker explained, "targeting financial systems of successful regional companies, yours included." Martin implemented the enhanced protocols last quarter, Damon confirmed. "No breaches detected." Parker nodded approval. "Your preparedness makes my job easier." After discussing technical details, he added, "Heard from the federal prosecutor yesterday. Sebastian's trying to leverage additional testimony against former associates for sentence reduction." Predictable. His pattern involves sacrificing others for personal advantage. "Some patterns don't change," Parker observed. "Unlike you, most people in your position would have been destroyed by what happened, financially or psychologically." Damon considered this assessment. The difference was preparation versus reaction. They expected emotional response rather than strategic counteraction. This fundamental misunderstanding, underestimating Damon's capacity for calculated response, had been their critical error. They had mistaken his patience for passivity, his privacy for vulnerability. As autumn progressed toward winter, Damon finalized plans for the foundation's expansion. The Psychological Resilience Program would launch in spring, helping individuals recover from manipulative relationships through practical skills development rather than just emotional support. Martin Russo, reviewing the foundation's financial structure, noted its effectiveness. "You've created something meaningful from their attempted destruction." Poetic resolution. This observation crystallized the fundamental outcome: transformation rather than mere survival. Damon had not only recovered from betrayal, but had systematically converted that experience into constructive impact for himself and others. In December, Detective Parker requested Damon's consultation on a community security initiative. Over lunch at the lake house, he shared concerning patterns. 3 cases in the past year matching the profile. Calculated financial extraction through relationship manipulation. Different perpetrators, but identical methodologies. Damon recognized the pattern immediately, like Bianca's approach. "Exactly. We're developing preventive education programs, warning signs, identification." Parker hesitated before adding, "Your insight would be valuable, given your experience recognizing and countering these tactics." The request represented an opportunity to prevent others from experiencing similar predation. "I'll contribute whatever helps." By year's end, Damon's systematic reconstruction of business, property, and purpose was complete. The conspiracy that had targeted him had instead catalyzed his evolution into something more formidable, a man whose experience with betrayal had refined rather than defined him. On New Year's Eve, a small gathering assembled at the lake house, trusted allies who had become something more like family. Terry and his wife, Diana and her partner, Martin and Detective Parker, Meredith Holloway, fully recovered and sharp as ever, Audrey Bennett, who had transformed her own family trauma into creative purpose. As midnight approached, Terry raised his glass to leaving the past where it belongs, and to building something better in its place. Diana added. To consequences, Damon concluded, completing the sentiment. Their glasses clinked in agreement beneath the winter stars reflecting across ice-edged water. The fire crackled in the background, converting destruction into warmth and light. Appropriate metaphor for the journey completed. Long after guests departed, Damon stood alone on the dock, surveying the property that had transformed from tactical acquisition to genuine home. Strategic necessity had evolved into authentic preference. The sanctuary designed for temporary retreat had become permanent foundation. Inside his office, a single surveillance monitor remained, not from paranoia but prudent vigilance. The screen showed empty perimeters, secure boundaries. Not because threats had disappeared from the world, but because they had been systematically identified and addressed. The journal, once containing contingency plans, now documented strategic growth, business expansions, foundation initiatives, architectural innovations. Its pages chronicled not survival, but ascension, not recovery, but transformation. Damon closed the journal, securing it in a drawer that no longer required hiding. The man Bianca and Sebastian had targeted, the supposedly vulnerable, manipulable husband, had never truly existed. Their fundamental miscalculation was attacking someone they fundamentally failed to understand. The ruthlessness they had awakened was not emotional rage, but strategic precision, the methodical dismantling of those who confused patience with weakness. The consequences they faced were not vengeful punishment, but natural outcome of their own actions, systematically exposed and addressed. As New Year began, Damon Vega stood not as victim or survivor, but as architect of his company's expansion, of his foundation's impact, and most importantly, of his own deliberate reconstruction. The betrayal that had attempted to destroy him had instead revealed his true foundation: uncompromising principle and unforgetting resolve. The final outcome was neither forgiveness nor forgetting, but something more definitive: the complete irrelevance of those who had proven themselves unworthy of consideration. They remained confined by prison walls, financial restrictions, and the consequences of their own actions, while he continued building, expanding, and evolving. The fire they had ignited had burned away pretense and compromise, leaving only the essential core. A man who never forgave betrayal, never forgot disloyalty, and never failed to ensure comprehensive consequences. In that unflinching clarity lay his true strength. Not in vengeance, but in principle. Not in emotion, but in resolve. The path forward held no lingering shadows, only the clear direction